Hello and welcome everyone to the 6th Annual TARO Brown Bag. I'm Rebecca Romanchuk, serving as chair of the TARO Steering Committee this year, and I'm so happy to have you join us. A few housekeeping notes. This is a webinar, so attendees are in listen and view only mode. Only the panelists will be seen and heard, in addition to our slides. Please use the Q&A at the bottom of your screen to ask questions of the panelists as we go along, and we'll answer those at the wrap-up Q&A session as the final portion of the event. Feel free to use the chat to greet others attending and if you have technical issues to report. Next slide. We've traditionally held this Lunch and Learn session at the Society of Southwest Archivists annual meeting, which of course couldn't go forward as planned this year. So we're taking the opportunity to reach out to you through this webinar. This gives us the chance to let you meet everyone involved with leading Texas archival resources online through its steering committee and subcommittees. And the extraordinary and dedicated people you'll meet today are only half of the picture. Altogether, 28 people currently volunteer their time for TARO, serving on our subcommittees and the steering committee. And we're always ready to welcome more of you out there in the archival community to join us in this really exciting work we do to continually improve the essential service TARO provides that allows institutions across the state to contribute description of their amazing original archival collections to a finding aid consortium used by researchers worldwide. This afternoon, you'll hear about volunteer opportunities that we have available and about the grant activities underway at TARO that will transform our website and search function, provide free training to our members in creating finding aids and in improving finding aid metadata, and allow institutions who need help with creating EAD finding aids to join TARO with support from our volunteers and our grant-funded encoding vendor. We'll also share news about a separate grant effort by the California Digital Library to launch an action plan toward building a national level archival finding aid network, which TARO has pledged to support. You'll have received the link to our TARO fact sheet for our 2019-2020 update in your reminder emails about today's webinar. Before we continue, we have an audience poll to see how many of you are at institutions that belong to TARO or not, and to ask if you're already familiar with TARO or not. Let's go ahead and start the poll. You can select two responses to answer those questions, one regarding your institution and the other about yourself. We'll wait about 15 or 20 seconds for everyone to answer. Let's go ahead and end the poll and share results so we can all see. So it looks like we have a great many people who belong to an institution who are a TARO member, a few who aren't, a few who are interested, a lot of people already knowing about TARO, but a few that aren't yet. So we're really glad to have everybody here. Glad to have a mix of people attending. I think you'll find the information we're presenting today to be useful no matter what your connection currently is with TARO. Everyone can just click out of your own poll window there. Next slide. Our steering committee is made up of 7 officers and our permanent UT Libraries representative. The elected vice chair has a 3-year commitment, serving 1 year as vice chair before becoming chair the following year, and then becoming immediate past chair the year after that. You'll see and hear our at-large members when they present toward the end of our program. But right now, I want to introduce our other officers. Robert Weaver, Vice Chair, Carla Alvarez, Immediate Past Chair, and Irene Lilly, Secretary. Each is going to say a few words about their duties in these roles and what drew them to decide to run for a steering committee office. Robert,
Hello, everyone. I'm Robert Weaver, a manuscript archivist at the Southwest Collection at Texas Tech. And I began my work with TARO, like most of you who are probably on this call, just by submitting finding aids and really appreciating how much attention those finding aids were getting for us and for our collections. Because I saw the value in that, I attended the first annual Brown Bag 6 years ago, whenever it was, at the Society of Southwest Archivists annual meeting. Was interested enough in it that I volunteered for our metadata standards committee, who you'll be hearing from later today, and then was asked to chair the website and technology subcommittee, was elected to the steering committee as an at-large member in 2018, and now I serve as vice chair, and I encourage anyone else to get, maybe not that level of involvement, but definitely get involved, because we do good work here and we need you. Thanks.
Thanks, Robert. Carla.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carla Alvarez. I am the U.S. Latinx Archivist at the Vincent Collection, part of UT Libraries. And I got involved with TARO in late 2015. At that point, I volunteered, was invited, and I accepted to be like a co-chair of the standards subcommittee. And at that point, TARO was was in the middle of doing the NEH planning grant. So it's very exciting to, after to be in the situation where we are now doing the implementation grant. I was involved with standards for several years, and then after the steering committee started having elections, I ran as an at-large member, then ran for the vice chair position, and I'm currently the immediate past chair of the steering committee. And really the reason I was initially involved is like someone reached out to me, so consider this your call to participate. I'm inviting you to participate in TARO. So that's why. And then as I got involved, I saw the value of TARO and like what TARO does. I think you'll find that when you get involved, it is a supportive community. I would say there are no requirements, like you'll hear a lot of us who have been involved with TARO for several years, but I said it at the last Brown Bag when we could meet in person, and I'll say it again here today. There are no requirements to be involved with TARO. You don't have to have years of experience to either become a member of one of the subcommittees, which is the volunteer position, or if you want to run for one of the elected positions, that you are more than welcome to self-nominate, nominate another colleague. I think the only requirement that we would have is that you're passionate about TARO and that you want to participate. We all support each other, even where we no longer have an active involvement in one of the elected positions. We're here to help you as you step into different roles. So I definitely want to encourage you to reach out, maybe just like start a conversation with some of the people that you'll see here today presenting, and get involved with TARO. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. Irene.
Howdy, everyone. I'm Irene Lully. I'm an archivist with the Harry Ransom Center. I serve as secretary for the group, so I mostly round up the minutes or the subcommittee reports. I send them to the steering committee, and then I write up the minutes for our monthly meeting. My 2-year term ends at the end of this year, and I would highly encourage anyone to run for this position, especially if you're an early career archivist. This has been a great way for me to learn or to get to meet archivists from all over Texas and to really learn more about what TARO does for all of its repositories. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Thanks, Irene. I can say for myself that I became interested in running for the vice chair position after being involved with TARO through the standards subcommittee for several years. But I believe anybody that's familiar with our encoded archival description and enjoys being involved in a collaborative effort should consider running for one of our open offices. As chair, I call and preside at the steering committee meetings, coordinate with the secretary on preparing agendas, ensure that a written report about TARO activities is shared with our members at least annually, and collaborate with the rest of the steering committee to establish ad hoc subcommittees and setting charges and timelines for them. Next slide, please. These are the subcommittees and the chairs and co-chairs who lead them. You'll be hearing from each, although we're covering the content from governance in the introduction you've just heard, and also later when we hear from our at-large members who make up our nominating committee. Next slide. I also wanted to take a moment to recognize our fantastic UT Libraries technical support staff who keep TARO running smoothly and are key players in the grant work for TARO that you'll be hearing more about later. JJ Bennett, Joanna Jackson, Jade Diaz, and Minnie Rangel all do a superb job, and we're very lucky to have them working with TARO. Next slide. Thanks. You may have already heard about the National Archival Finding Aid Network, or NAFAN, if you've been keeping up with TARO news at our TARO Today blog or through other archival communication outlets. This grant-funded effort, led by the California Digital Library, began in 2018 as a planning initiative with an in-person symposium last year where Carla Alvarez represented TARO. The report from that initiative provided the basis for the current grant application pending with IMLS, with awards to be announced next month. The action plan proposed is a multi-year phased approach to pilot and demonstrate a national finding aid network that provides meaningful, inclusive, and low barrier pathways to participation by any cultural heritage institution in the US. TARO will identify stakeholders to participate in advisory structures and working groups, share data, provide input on system and functional requirements, enlist and participate as research subjects, and test and evaluate requirements and prototype systems. We encourage you to read the action plan and keep in touch with TARO to hear more about NAFAN developments. Now we'll move on to our subcommittee presentations, starting with our website and technology subcommittee chaired by Robert Weaver and Ada Nagraru.
Hello, everyone. It's could you pop it back one slide, please? I was going to read some names. Thank you. I'm Robert Weaver, again, from Texas Tech University. I'm a co-chair of the website and technology subcommittee along with Ada Nagraru. And we have a really great committee here, Maristella, Sandra, Anselin, Kim, and Kristen, many of whom were involved in the preparation of the NEH grant that we received to update the website, and the rest of whom are about to get heavily involved in 3 different principal tasks that we're working on during the grant period. Next slide. The 3 primary responsibilities that we've been tasked with are these 3 here. The first is exactly what it sounds like, coordinating functionality and usability testing. As the grant-funded developers ramp up, or rather revamp the new site, features are going to need to be tested, and we coordinate that. That consists of organizing testers, getting them the tools that they need to conduct that testing, then receiving that data and collating it, making sense of it for the developers to try to tweak and otherwise make sure that the site and all its bells and whistles are actually working, doing what we wanted. Our core subcommittee is going to be doing that with assistance, hopefully, from volunteers from other subcommittees and the steering committee, but also folks like y'all today who might want to come in and contribute with the testing to make sure that the site is everything that we hope it can be. The second task here is quote unquote integration of finding aids with other systems, which can mean oh, see, Daniel Alonso has volunteered for the testing. I'm going to call him out. You're on it now, Daniel. This is going to range from making sure that the data is OAI, PMH harvested, by the way, to making sure that Archive Grid is going to include our finding aids on their site. But it also means that we're exploring if and how metadata records can be exported from finding aids. So maybe MARC records, or maybe Dublin Core, MODS, METs, other metadata schema that might be useful for you. I'm sure you can imagine a lot of ways that such a metadata export would be useful, but we're principally looking at it as a way to repurpose EAD metadata to provide context for objects in digital environments at other TARO members' archives. Then the third task is piloting, or rather organizing a pilot EAD3 conversion. This is done in close partnership with our standard subcommittee, who you're going to hear from shortly. And it's really just a high-level test of encoding some sample finding aids, exploring what the EAD3 style sheet might look like, and then seeing how that might display in the new environment, testing all of that. It is the most minimal basic level approach to this implementation and functionality that we can do to just sort of lay a foundation for what I think most of us who've looked at this can agree is an eventual conversion by all finding aids, or of all finding aids, in the archival world. We don't know when that'll happen, but it could. So next slide, please. What we're doing right now is actually patiently looking on while the developers sort of design and experiment with implementing some of the different changes and enhancements that we'd like. So what I'm going to do is run down some of those first for researchers, and then I'll tell you about what they're doing for us as archivists as well. You can see the list of those researcher functional requirements here. The first being just improving the ways that finding aids are displayed and navigated, as well as refining ways to search and browse the site. We're going to have keyword searches as we do now. We're also hoping to delimit searches by creator or geographic location or institution, or of course subject headings. And then we're going to have the results be sortable on the site, which, believe it or not, they aren't necessarily right now. So you have to do a lot of digging when you get search results. We're going to make that easier on researchers. The point of this is that a bunch of browsing and searching enhancements are going to be implemented to bring the site up from its sort of 20-year-old format to the navigation and searching expectations that our researchers have now in 2020, 2021, 2022, while this work is going on. We're going to make sure that the site links to users, or rather repositories' digital collections, which it can do right now, but we're going to see how to make that easier on repositories if possible. We're going to make sure the site is ADA and otherwise accessibility compliant. We're going to make it mobile friendly, which if you've had the same experience as I have, it can be challenging to convey the information in a mobile environment right now. We're going to get rid of that obstacle, I think. Now, I've already put out a call for testers. I see, some people seem to be interested in doing that. So please, if you'd like, get a hold of me or someone on the steering committee or Ada or anyone involved with TARO. We'll hook you up with that. Next slide, please. For repositories or archivists like us here on this call, there are these are just a few of the things that we're looking to implement. First and foremost, we need to make sure that existing finding aids are going to show up on the new site. And developers are already looking at ways to make sure that that happens right now, as well as ways to successfully submit valid finding aids to the site that will show up on it as well. Now, while that involves a lot of different tasks, one of the ones I'm excited to tell you about is that we really want to establish a browser-based finding aid submission platform. If you submitted a finding aid to TARO, you got to download an FTP program, which for most of us means calling our IT department to make sure our computer will actually acquiesce to our desire to install that program on it. Sometimes you got to get a hold of JJ or someone at UT to help get that set up. But wouldn't it be great if you could just drag your XML file into a browser-based repository, like perhaps on GitHub or something like that, and then close your browser and walk away, have your finding aid show up. We're trying to see if we can make something that simple be a reality. We're also looking at, as I mentioned earlier, making sure that metadata gets harvested, making sure that we can export different metadata schema, and then make sure that we can have a flexible and intelligible way to get usage statistics about our finding aids. We have that already for existing finding aids. It can sometimes be a little clunky to interface with, so we're looking at a good way to do that while also maintaining the legacy statistics that we have for the last decade or more currently available on the site. So that's just a high-level overview, as I said, of the functionality that's promised by the grant. And as the grant project moves forward, we're going to have more details on what this looks like that I hope we can share with you perhaps on the blog or elsewhere. And then hopefully at next year's Brown Bag, which everyone should attend, we'll be able to actually show off some of the features of the site, is my hope. And with that said, I'll turn it back over to Becky and the Standards Subcommittee, who have some more stuff to share with you.
Thanks so much, Robert. Next is our Standards Subcommittee, chaired by Molly Holtz and Juliana Barrera Gomez. Oh, looks like you're still muted, Juliana.
Oh my goodness, I did that. Yes. Hi, I'm unmuted now, everyone. I'm Juliana from the Standards Subcommittee. We're a really super amazing 8-person crew with me. Juliana, and Molly Holtz from the Austin History Center as the co-chairs. Our members are Matt Richardson from the Houston Metropolitan Research Center, Lisa Struthers from the San Jacinto Museum of History, Robert Weaver, who you just heard from, and Elliot Williams, who's from the University of Miami Libraries, but he's based here in Texas, and he's helping us out, and that's pretty awesome of him. And I'm also from UTSA. It says that on the slides. We have a Zoom poll for you. Could we pull that up, please? Hopefully this works. I'm not yet seeing the poll. I saw the earlier one though.
Juliana, I see the poll up.
Okay, great. Okay, there. It's maybe
People are
my
answering.
computer's just being slow. Sorry about that. Okay, so the question is, how familiar are you with TARO's EAD 2002 Schema Best Practice Guidelines? And it ranges from very familiar, you look at it regularly, to I don't know what this is. If we could give like 10 seconds or so for people to vote, since it's been up for a while, maybe it was just my computer. Feels like it's been about 10 seconds. Do we want to bring up the results? Oh, wow. Okay. That's great. So we have some people who are familiar with it, from very to somewhat, and people who look at it, but they don't really consult it for finding aid creation. And some people who know that it exists, but they've never really looked at it. And a number of people who didn't know anything about it before today. That's great. I am hoping that if you don't use it, or especially if you haven't heard about it, let us know, and we would be really happy to talk to you about it and why it's important. Peggy, could I have the next slide, please? So Standards is responsible for creating the best practices guidelines, also called the BPG. It's the documentation that's shared with members that encourages better compliance with encoding standards, and this provides improved search results in TARO. It's a document that we can forward to everybody after this, this webinar too. It was last updated in 2017, and Standards has been looking at it and thinking about some needed changes that are coming up, especially in light of the website redesign. We've also provided support for the Summerly grant, so we'll speak in a moment about that project. We created a finding aid template that assisted them with converting legacy finding aids from new TARO members to get them up to EAD 2002 schema compliant standards using a vendor. And we're also researching and evaluating new trends in description, such as fast headings and EAD 3. Next slide, please. Okay, so our current work, we have a lot to do. We're reporting on our analysis of adopting fast subject headings and the potential impacts of EAD 3 adoption. We're also assisting the WebTech Subcommittee with their work on EAD 3 finding aid templates of some sorts, and we'll be supporting the metadata analyst with their work for things like controlled vocabularies, and we will be assuming a good deal of the responsibilities for maintaining controlled vocabularies and other data functionalities post-grant. We'll continue to actively work with other subcommittees to make sure they're getting high-quality finding aids so that members can utilize the new website's functionalities as much as possible. And we will be very actively involved, especially with outreach and education and helping our TARO members transition to the new site. And we will be here to help with any encoding questions or issues that come up too. Finally, we could always benefit from new members. We have a really great team. If you'd like to join us and share your backgrounds and skill sets, we would be really happy to have you. So feel free to email me or Molly, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Juliana. Now for our Summerly QA subcommittee, chaired by Carla Alvarez, who's joined by our previous immediate past chair, Sandra Yates.
Hi, everyone. Back. As I mentioned in my introduction, as immediate past chair of the steering committee, part of the responsibilities in that role is to chair the QA subcommittee. And so here's a list of all the members, and I do want to take a moment to let you read their names because they have been doing amazing work since like, I think it's going on 2 years now, and I do want to mention them. So Hallie, Katie, Emily, Molly, Kristen, Joanne, Ada, Evelina, and of course Sandra, who was the chair last year of the QA subcommittee, and that involves managing 2 different workflows in like reviewing finding aids before we send them to a vendor. Next slide, please. So this is information about what the TARO's New Member Initiative, which is a project funded by the Summerlee Foundation, and participation is open to new members. So if you're not a part of TARO and you're interested in joining and getting some help to encode your finding aids, you can do this. It is also open to current members who have lost in-house EAD expertise. So it's really really great way to become involved with TARO, to become an active member if you have been, you know, kind of quiet the last couple of years. This is a really great opportunity to get involved. And under this project, repositories create word finding aids, which using a template that was created by standards. And then those word finding aids are reviewed by the QA members. We do 2 passes of the review before we send those finding aids to be encoded by a vendor. And then the vendor sends us EAD XML files, which get reviewed again before they get added to the TARO server. So we really take care to like review the documents and make sure that they meet the requirements in the template, and that it'll to have the best possible finding aids online, and especially now that TARO is getting a revamp, so it'll be even better. So if you're interested in joining in this, what we're calling our new member initiative, but again, if you're a current member and need EAD help, you can also get involved. But if you're a new member and interested in this, you can reach out to Rebecca Romanchuk. Her contact information is here, and she can help you, guide you through the process of creating a TARO account, which can take some time sometimes. And then at the bottom of the slide, we also have some information about the workflow information to give you an idea of the whole process, which here I gave an overview, but it is quite extensive, to give you an idea about that. Next slide, please. So here's a list of the current project participants. As you can see, we started this project in kind of like late 2018. So these are like the repositories that are currently participating. Since it's an extensive review process, it does take time to go through the whole review before we even send them to a vendor. But in November 2019, we sent a batch of 29 XML files, which have been uploaded to TARO. They're live in TARO from the following repositories. Harris County Archives, Catholic Archives of Texas, Lamar University. And then in May, so last month, still in June, we sent a batch of 60 finding aids to the vendor to get encoded. And they are the delivery, we're expecting an EAD XML delivery at the end of this month. So finding aids from the following repositories will be coming back encoded from the vendor: Catholic Archives, Dallas Historical Society, Fort Worth Jewish Archives, Lamar University, Menil Collection, Museum of Fine Arts Houston, and Panhandle Plains Historical Museum Research Center. So we're expecting another large batch of files to review. And again, we're getting the XML finding aids, which will be reviewed before they get added to TARO. It is a process that takes, once you decide to become a member, getting through the process of getting your account created, and then once you start submitting finding aids, it does take time. So I would encourage you to reach out if you're even interested, because the process can take some time, and it's better to get started now than to wait. You don't have to have a perfect finding aid ready to go. We'll have a template that we can share with you and get you started that way. So definitely feel free to reach out with questions about any of this. Thank you.
Thanks, Carla and Sandra. Next up is Amy Bowman, one of the members of the NEH Grant Management Subcommittee and chair of our Funding and Sustainability Subcommittee, followed by a presentation by James Williamson, chair of our Outreach and Education Subcommittee. He'll be joined by Amanda Foki, one of our EAD workshop trainers and chair of our Governance Subcommittee.
Hi, everybody. This is Amy Bowman, the photo archivist at the Briscoe Center for American History, and I've been a TARO committee member for several years now in various roles. I'm going to present next about 3 different TARO committees that I'm currently involved with: the NEH Grant Management Committee, the Funding and Sustainability Subcommittee, and some upcoming grant-related training for TARO members. The Grant Management Subcommittee formed after TARO received our current NEH grant because there was a need for a group within UT that could coordinate administrative tasks related to the grant and facilitate communication between the TARO Steering Committee and the grant staff at UT Libraries. This committee is comprised of all UT folks, Aaron Choate and Carl Alvarez at UT Libraries, then me at the Briscoe Center. And it's important to note that we're not managing the progress and completion of grant tasks. That's up to the various TARO subcommittees and steering committee. We're just helping to administer the grant. And so far, one of our primary tasks has been to help place the positions outlined in the grant within the staffing structure of UT Libraries. And these positions are both the TARO applications developer, who is working with UT Library staff on the redesign and development of the new site, and also the TARO metadata analyst. UT Libraries is recruiting for this position right now, and this staffer will help TARO standardize its controlled access vocabulary. We'll also be involved in coordinating some HR tasks with a graphic designer once that consultant position is hired. In addition to helping place these positions within UT Libraries, Aaron Choate has also compiled our interim grant progress reports for the NEH and gives those to UT Libraries grant person to submit. Next slide, please. So next up is funding and sustainability, and I'm currently the chair of this subcommittee. And historically, the function of the committee has been to review potential grant sources and compile grant proposals. And this committee is just me right now. There were only a few fundraising tasks that needed to happen during the course of our current NEH grant, so it wasn't enough to keep several committee members busy. However, I did want to take this opportunity to make sure that all TARO members feel welcome to contribute ideas for fundraising and grant writing. We don't have any current plans to submit another grant proposal beyond what I'll mention today, but there's definitely a need in the future to keep TARO thriving with ongoing projects and to sustain it. And please get in touch with me with your ideas for fundraising and sustainability initiatives. So what did we say that we would do to fundraise during the term of our current grant? Thankfully, we didn't commit ourselves to a huge amount of fundraising. We just said that we would seek funding for 6 in-person training sessions that would be held across the state so TARO members could come up to speed with TARO 2.0. We also said that we would get funds to make 3 webinars, though now, especially since all of us have Zoom licenses, this shouldn't be too expensive to implement. We've made good progress so far towards these goals, securing funds for 3 trainings from the State Historical Records Advisory Board. And this is through funds that they received from the NHPRC. And we recently submitted another request to them for funds for the final 3 sessions. And we'll hear back about those later this year, likely around Thanksgiving or so. Next slide, please. So I'm going to extend my talk into the next subcommittee's report to explain a bit more about what these training sessions for TARO 2.0 will look like and what kind of timeline we're hoping for right now. And then James Williamson will be taking over for the Outreach and Education Subcommittee. And as I mentioned, the initial grant proposal outlines 6 in-person sessions and 3 webinars. The in-person sessions will be held in geographically dispersed locations throughout the state, and I'll show the tentative schedule with my next slide. We're hoping that those can start in early 2021. We'll also put together 3 webinars focusing on procedures for submitting finding aids, editing controlled access terms like subject headings, and we'll also create a tutorial for the public users of TARO. In addition to these sessions, we'll be putting together a training manual that documents the new steps needed for uploading finding aids to TARO. And this won't be a huge book size manual. It'll be just a one-pager with a brief description of the tools and steps needed to get your finding aids onto TARO. Next slide, please. We had initially planned that the first funds that we received from the Historical Records Advisory Board would be used to give more sessions for newcomers to TARO. These are like the ones that Amanda Foki and I have given in the past. But since we needed to push back the dates due to COVID-19, it made sense to update these to train TARO members in TARO 2.0. However, depending upon the release date for the new TARO, these may stay as just general training sessions. We'll know more over the coming months. Right now, the trainings are scheduled for San Antonio, Denton, and El Paso in February and March 2021. And then we'll present at SSA in Baton Rouge that year and have 2 additional training sessions in Houston and Fort Worth in early 2022. And a very important note about this calendar, as you might expect, we hope to stick with this schedule. We may end up revising these dates based upon what happens over the coming months. And it seems likely that we'll know a lot more later on this fall about how feasible those first trainings in February and March will be. We welcome any feedback from members about training. Did we miss a session or a location where you'd really like to host a training? Do you have a preference for a live versus a recorded webinar? And what sorts of training tools would you like to see that would really help you get a handle on TARO 2.0? And please send those along. We'd like to respond to the needs of TARO contributors. And one last note, we'll be releasing a webinar later on this summer that gives a general EAD overview. And this is the same training that I've done in the morning when Amanda and I have presented in the past. So keep an eye out for that. And with that, I'll turn over the reins to James Williamson, who's chair of the Outreach and Education Subcommittee.
Next slide. Hi, everybody. My name is James Williamson. I work at Southern Methodist University. Like Amy said, I'm the chair of the Outreach and Education Subcommittee. Also on the committee are Madeline Moyer of the Austin History Center, Crystal Brooks of Dallas City Hall, and Joseph Luchik of the University of Houston. Next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the other work that we've been doing on the Outreach and Education Subcommittee. So what have we accomplished so far this year? We've added a couple more tutorials to our YouTube page, if you're not familiar with. We've been adding videos kind of going over kind of various process with involved in TARO submission. We've also, like Amy said, we're working with the in-person training to kind of work on documentation and materials for the submission process. What are we working on right now? We're still continuing with the instructional videos for the YouTube channel. We're going to focus a little bit more, not so much on the kind of, we'll focus on the tools, but kind of delve more into the actual I can't find the right word, processes used in creating finding aids. So subject access, kind of pain points for, things like dates and various other topics. As TARO changes, we want to create tutorials that can kind of still work with the new TARO. And then once we kind of know what TARO looks like in the future, we can sort of adjust and add new material to kind of then talk about how you'll actually be submitting to TARO and how you'll actually be using the site. So we're hoping to have a couple more videos up by the end of the summer. A lot of it's based off feedback from the QA committee and their involvement with the Summerly grant, as well as kind of obviously the best practices guidelines. We're also preparing a survey for TARO members to kind of help identify software and practices used in creating EAD finding aids. One of our most popular video is about using mail merge to create your content inventory, and use Excel, use mail merge, create the actual XML coding in fairly easy process, I guess, depending how long your box inventory is. But so we're looking for more things like that. Like, what are some processes that you use? What are some tools that we don't consider, you know, beyond the regular XML editor, Oxygen, archive space? You know, what else is out there so that we can sort of incorporate that into our tutorials and kind of create a broader kind of knowledge base. And then the final thing is we're working with the Funding and Sustainability Subcommittee for on-site training and for the webinars that will play a bigger part in the webinars, and hopefully figure out ways to make those available after the webinar itself. And that's my spiel.
Thanks, James and Amy. Our last group presentation is from our at-large members who serve as ex officio members of our nominating committee, Penny Castillo, Ada Negraru, and Rachel Zipperer.
Hello?
Yeah, you can go ahead, Penny.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Hi, I'm Penny Castillo. I am currently a project archivist with the Fort Worth Library. I am an at-large member for TARO along with Ada and Rachel. And besides providing support for TARO, we also make up the nominating committee. As such, that entails calling for nominations, which we will be doing at the end of the year, collecting nominations, and conducting the elections. I first learned about TARO while I was in grad school, and as a history major, I wish it had existed before I was in grad school. I found it to be a very invaluable tool. So to me, the work that TARO is doing is very important. I'm often seeking out new organizations that are not part of TARO in hopes of growing our database. And as Carla mentioned, we are still offering the Summerly Grant, which assists new organizations with coding finding aids and getting their materials up online. I saw an opportunity in 2019 to be on the steering committee for TARO, and I nominated myself and called my friends and asked for their vote. And when I heard that there were plans to possibly make it go into a national database, I knew I wanted to be part of it. It's a great networking tool for making professional connections, and I encourage anyone who's looking for a committee to be part of or to consider TARO. If you have skills with EAD or IT design, or if you just want something to add to your resume, this is a great organization. In addition to encouraging participation on a TARO committee, help us encourage growth and contact our chair, Becky Romanchuk, if you know of an organization that can benefit from participating in TARO. And don't forget, we have 2 positions opening next year, and we will be having elections at the end of this year for vice chair, chair-elect, and secretary positions. So now let's hear a little more from some of our other at-large members. Ada, let's hear from you.
Oh, hi, I'm Ada Negraru. I am an archivist and special collections librarian at Southern Methodist University. I attended my first TARO brown bag at the SSA meeting in Arlington in 2015. That was the year when a bad thunderstorm knocked out power in the entire hotel, and most sessions were held in the dark. So I barely saw the volunteer sign-up sheet that circulated during that meeting, and I wrote down my name on it. At the time, I had just graduated from library school, but I had been part of the encoded archival description working group at SMU for a couple of years, and I had been writing and encoding finding aids. With not much experience, but a lot of appreciation for TARO's role, I wanted to contribute in some way. So I volunteered for the Website and Technology Subcommittee. 5 years later, I am still with that group and currently co-chairing with Robert Weaver, whom you heard from earlier. And I also joined the Summer League QA subcommittee, where I helped prepare finding aids submitted by new TARO members. Then last year, I was nominated and elected as an at-large member of the steering committee. I encourage all of you to run for this year's open positions mentioned by Penny. And now I'm gonna let Rachel introduce herself.
Hi, yeah, I'm Rachel Zipperer. I'm the University Archivist at the University of North Texas and another of our at-large members of the steering committee. I'm also a new archivist. I got my master's from UT Austin last year and started in my position at UNT in October. I was already a little bit familiar with TARO from my graduate coursework and some practical experience in the archives. My first semester in grad school, actually, a classmate and I did a practicum at the Benson Latin American Collection where Carla Alvarez supervised us. And we processed a collection and created the finding aid, which got uploaded to TARO as like the final step of completing the project. So that stands out in my mind as like a big deal, first introduction to TARO. I would also use TARO to assist patrons when I worked in reference at UT libraries. So yeah, I had that little bit of experience both on the back end of working with finding aids and also using the platform to assist researchers. So when an at-large member position opened up last fall, I nominated myself to be part of the committee, and I wanted to be part of TARO to help contribute to this goal of making finding aids from Texas more discoverable and accessible, as well as doing work beyond the reach of just my institution and also making connections with other archives professionals in Texas. So yeah, I also hope that my being a very new professional is testament to the fact that anybody who wants to be involved in TARO can. I think I ran for this position like a few weeks after I started my first job out of school. So nobody needs to be intimidated about running for either of our open positions or getting involved in subcommittees. It is a really encouraging and inclusive environment. And I just hope, yeah, anyone who's interested feels encouraged to get involved. And Penny's going to talk again briefly about our open positions now.
Thank you, Ada and Rachel. So next slide, please. And these are our next positions coming open for next year for the steering committee, vice chair, chair-elect for the 2021-2023 year, and then secretary for the 2021-2022 year. So feel free to volunteer and become part of TARO.
Thanks, Penny, Ada, and Rachel. Those are great stories. In addition to running for an open steering committee position, TARO has volunteer opportunities available with its subcommittees. The link to the volunteer sign-up Google Sheet is also in the TARO fact sheet that you were sent a link to in your webinar reminder email. We encourage you to sign up and indicate which subcommittee you're interested in serving with, and a subcommittee chair will get in touch with you. You can also indicate your interest in being nominated for an open steering committee position if you'd like to be contacted with more information about what's involved with serving. Next slide, please. There are two ways your institution can join TARO. The first is as a self-sustaining member, able to create your own EAD finding aids to contribute to TARO's website. You can find out more at our How to Join link on the TARO Today blog. And if you're not creating EAD finding aids, you could become a participant in our Summerly New Member Initiative, as Carla described. Please contact me to discuss your interest and any questions you have about the process for joining. We're always looking for more institutions to join TARO. We have one final poll for you to gauge your interest in how you'd like to attend the TARO Brown Bag next year. If we can pull up poll number 3, please. So of course, next year, the SSA annual meeting is scheduled to convene in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We're thinking about both having an in-person brown bag, as traditionally we've done, but also holding it this way as well as an expanded version. Looks like the numbers are crunching there. They're about settled. We can end the poll, I think, and share the results. All right. So I'm happy to see this, that people kind of like both ways. We do too. We like the in-person contact with you at the SSA brown bag. But we also think this is a great option, a more inclusive option for people who can't attend SSA. Also something that we can very easily record and have available for people to consult later. Thanks so much. So in early 2021, we'll announce our plans for that year's brown bag. Stay tuned. That is the end of our presentation content. So we would like to take questions from you. We've already had a few questions come through the Q&A. Feel free to add some more. We've been answering those as we have been seeing those come through. And all the panelists can chime in here. Hollis mentioned, yes, there's just so many acronyms in our profession in general, but also in what TARO's work is centered upon. I wonder if we might be able to, in our new website, have some links, maybe a glossary even. I believe we talked a bit about that at our all hands meeting earlier this year, just to provide some more resources to our members, especially brand new members who are new to this world. And also, yes, so Minnie Rangel, who's been with TARO since its earliest days, was hired as the TARO applications developer for the NEH grant. So she brings a wealth of knowledge, expertise, and familiarity with TARO. I'm also looking at the chat here. So new finding aid upload procedure, projected ETA for, I don't know if any of our people working on development have something to say about that, if there's kind of a general expectation for that. Could be a portion of a year that we could nail it down to. I'm not certain how soon that might be available, if that might be toward the end of the grant. We expect a lot of several of the biggest deliverables to be toward the end of the grant, which is going to be spring of 2022. I see another question here. I don't know if I've backed up enough there, but the last one I see, how representative do we think TARO's currently collected finding aids are of all Texas archival resources? That's a really excellent question. I know there are more Texas archives out there that we can have join TARO's fold. So we have a lot of universities that have joined TARO, which seems pretty natural. It started at University of Texas, but there were also non-university charter members of TARO, including my institution, the Texas State Library and Archives Commission, Texas General Land Office, another state agency. Also, Public Libraries, Austin History Center at APL here in Austin was an early member. So looking at our membership and assessing it for institutional diversity and inclusion, I think is going to be an important thing for us to do. And as chair, that's one of my, the chair's roles. This rotates on a yearly basis. I'm chair for this year. Robert will be chair next year. Someone out there, we don't know who, but one of you perhaps will be chair the following year. So please think about that. running for the vice chair position and going through that 3-year commitment. It's a great opportunity to contribute to the cause, to learn more about TARO, to really make a difference and to represent your institution in TARO's leadership. That's very important. Amy, do we see any other questions in the chat that I may have overlooked?
I'm looking. So did we talk about how representative TARO's currently collected finding aids are of all archival resources in Texas? We haven't discussed that yet, right?
No.
Sarah Norris asked that. One of the goals with Summerly, TARO started in around 2000 and took on a few new members throughout the years, but not a huge number. And so, maybe 40, and across the state, I don't know that anyone's ever done a count of how many different institutions, not just archives, but, museums, historical societies. There are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of places across the state that would be able to contribute finding aids. And so one of the goals of the Summerly grant was to really reach out to those folks who, might have staff who don't have an archives background. And it's been successful. We've brought in several institutions, but we do have just a certain amount of capacity for that. So I think at this point, we are working on being more representative of institutions across the state. And I think if there are other institutions who would like to join TARO and are interested, I know that the folks who are working with the Summerly project would love for those smaller institutions to get in touch with them. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Rebecca?
Actually, I kind of had been answering that, although kind of in a different facet. I'm very glad that you added what you did. There's so much to say about that, really. Yeah. It's a huge topic. I see some various questions. There's another thing in the chat here from Mikhail. If you have a small presence, are there funds to help us update and improve our TARO presence? So our Summerly Foundation grant is a way even for current TARO members, if you're at a loss for creating EAD or need a boost, we can look at that to see if you'd still be a great Summerly participant. Mm-hmm. So currently that's the one channel of funds that we have to have people join TARO and increase the number of finding aids they have on TARO as well if they're already a member but have kind of dropped off the ability of creating EAD or have some difficulty there.
So there's an open question here in the Q&A. Do you have any idea of the future role of TARO as the national database develops?
So TARO would be a participant. We're a core partner along with, when I brought the list with me because I knew people would ask about that. It's a very exciting prospect. We're a core partner for the NAF grant investigation with several other regional aggregators, as well as Archive Grid, you might be familiar with, that is a harvester of EAD. And also, do I have this right? Mark Records, am I remembering wrong? Archive Space, there are also expert advisors, which include Archive Space, the ArcLight Project, Coalition for Networked Information, Digital Public Library of America, Lyrasis, Library of Congress, Smithsonian, NARA, Mellon Foundation, others. So TARO would be one among many there represented. We're one of the more active and focused regional aggregators or state level aggregators have often encountered difficulties with maintaining their presence and have sometimes become dormant. So TARO is not in that category. I know we've hit the 1 o'clock hour, but we have some more questions, and if you can stay with us, we'd like to answer those live. I see one from Carolyn Jones. What would you recommend as a good introductory role for someone interested in participating in TARO initiatives? I would say if you'd like to, we've got some answers there from Amanda and Robert. Joining the subcommittees is fantastic. Talking to somebody who's on one of those subcommittees. We have some answers also for what can non-archivists do to support TARO. Great answers from Juliana. The Standards Committee continues to enjoy the input of catalogers and metadata librarians. Definitely very important. And Robert, as we test the functionality of the site, testing volunteers from researchers rather than just we archivists would be welcome, definitely. Helping us to test the tool, because it's not just, shouldn't be just for archivists, which we've kind of tended to build it for. We want it to be for as wide an audience as possible. Another question and several answers here about, is there interest in making tutorials for end users? Maybe that already exist and that, that you don't know about. So yes, one of the tutorials we're making for the NEH grant will be for public users, definitely. And our blog has a help section for submitting funding needs now with links to tutorials. We're trying to make those as available as possible.
I think too, if there's something else that you would like, some other kind of, whether it be a video or one pager that you'd like to be able to give to your patrons to explain about TARO, let us know if there's some kind of advertising that you'd like to see. But right now the plan is to make a short tutorial that will introduce TARO.
There might be some more questions coming through, but we can go ahead to the next slide. I just wanted to make sure that people got our last news here about staying in touch with TARO. And I would really want to thank all of the panelists. They perform such essential work for TARO. On behalf of the steering committee and subcommittees, thanks to everybody who attended for your time and your interest and your questions today. Everyone will be receiving a link to the slides and the recording of this webinar very soon. So please feel free to share them with your colleagues who weren't able to join us. You can stay in touch with TARO through our wiki, where we share our public documentation. And remember to subscribe to our TARO listserv and visit our TARO Today blog for the latest news about TARO. Unless we have any more questions in the Q&A or chat here, I think we can wrap up. We really, really appreciate you joining us. Take care and have a wonderful rest of your day.